Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. Carlos Alcaraz just crossed a line. Not a rule, not a boundary of sportsmanship, but that invisible line that separates confident trash talk from something more pointed, something more personal, something that makes you realize this isn't just another match. This is about to be a statement. You will have to sweat a lot to beat me. That's what Alcaraz said about his upcoming match against Alexander Zverev. And if you think that sounds like standard pre-match confidence, you're missing the subtext. You're missing the tone. You're missing the fact that Alcaraz specifically chose words that would get under Zverev's skin in a very particular way. Because here's what everyone knows but doesn't say out loud. Zverev has a reputation for wilting under pressure. For losing matches, he should win. For not being quite fit enough, quite tough enough, quite mentally strong enough when it really matters. He's been to Grand Slam finals and lost them. He's been in positions to win majors and couldn't close. And the word that always comes up when people talk about Zverev's failures? He couldn't handle it when things got tough. When he had to really grind. When he had to sweat. So when Alcaraz says Zverev will have to sweat a lot to beat him, he's not just talking about physical effort. He's poking at Zverev's biggest insecurity. He's essentially saying, I know your weakness. I know you struggle when matches get difficult, and I'm going to make this as difficult as possible. That's cold. That's calculated. That's the kind of psychological warfare we haven't really seen from Alcaraz before. And it's absolutely fascinating because it tells us something has shifted. Alcaraz isn't just the talented kid playing with joy anymore. He's becoming a killer. He's learning how to get inside opponents' heads before the match even starts. And Zverev? He just got put on notice in front of the entire tennis world. How he responds to this could define not just this match, but potentially both of their careers. Carlos Alcaraz has sent a brutal warning to Alexander Zverev ahead of their Australian Open semi-final, telling the German he'll have to sweat a lot to beat him, and the psychological implications are huge. In this deep dive, we unpack the layers of meaning behind Alcaraz's comment and why it's actually one of the most calculated pieces of mental warfare we've seen in recent tennis. We explore Zverev's history of struggling in big moments, analyze why Alcaraz's specific word choice was so pointed, and break down what this tells us about Alcaraz's evolution from talented youngster to ruthless competitor. From their head-to-head history to the tactical battle that's about to unfold, we cover everything you need to know about this semifinal showdown. Plus, we examine whether Alcaraz's trash talk will backfire or if it's exactly the right move to get in Zverev's head. We also look at what's at stake for both players, how their contrasting styles will play out, and why this match could be a turning point for one or both careers. If you've been following the Alcaraz-Zverev rivalry and want to understand the real story behind this quote, you need to watch this analysis. Let's start with context, because context is everything here. Alcaraz and Zverev have history. They've played each other multiple times. The head-to-head is relatively close. These aren't strangers meeting for the first time in a semi-final. They know each other's games. They know each other's tendencies. And crucially, they know each other's vulnerabilities. Alcaraz knows that Zverev is incredibly talented. The German has one of the best serves in tennis. His backhand is a weapon. He's tall, athletic, can hit massive ground strokes. On paper, Zverev has everything you need to be a dominant player. Multiple Masters 1000 titles, Olympic gold medal, been ranked as high as number 2 in the world. He's not some scrub who lucked into a semi-final, but Alcaraz also knows that Zverev has a mental block when it comes to Grand Slams. The guy has been to 2 Grand Slam finals, the US Open in 2020 and the French Open in 2024, lost both. The US Open loss was particularly brutal. He was up 2 sets to love against theme and couldn't close it out. He had the match in his hands and let it slip away. That loss has haunted him ever since. The French Open final against Alcaraz was different, but equally revealing. Zverev actually played well in that match. He pushed Alcaraz hard, but when the match got tight, when it really mattered, Alcaraz found another gear and Zverev couldn't match it. He was good, but not quite good enough when it counted most. So when Alcaraz says Zverev will have to sweat a lot, he's referencing all of this history. He's saying, I remember what happened at the French Open. I know you couldn't quite handle the pressure, and it's going to be even harder this time. That's not just confidence. That's a targeted psychological attack designed to plant doubt in Zverev's mind before they even step on court. Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just standard athlete trash talk? Don't all competitors say stuff like this? And sure, trash talk is part of sports. But there's a difference between generic confidence and specifically chosen words that target an opponent's known weaknesses. If Alcaraz had said, I'm feeling great and I think I'm going to win, that's standard pre-match talk. If he'd said, Zverev is a tough opponent, but I believe in my game, that's respectful and confident. But by specifically saying Zverev will have to sweat a lot, he's doing something more calculated. He's reminding Zverev of every time he's failed when things got difficult, every time the pressure got too much, every time he wasn't quite tough enough. And the beauty of it, from Alcaraz's perspective, is that it's all technically true and not really disrespectful. He's not calling Zverev weak or soft. He's just saying he'll have to work really hard. But everyone who follows tennis knows what he's really saying, including Zverev. That's masterful mind games. That's the kind of thing you'd expect from someone like Djokovic or Nadal who've been playing mental warfare for decades. The fact that Alcaraz is doing it at 21 years old shows a level of maturity and strategic thinking that's honestly kind of scary for the rest of the tour. Let's talk about what this means for the actual match. Because psychological warfare is fun to analyze, but at some point, they have to actually play tennis. And the tactical battle here is going to be fascinating. Zverev's game plan against Alcaraz is pretty straightforward. Use that massive serve to get free points and keep Alcaraz off balance on return. Hit big from the baseline, especially with the backhand, to push Alcaraz back and prevent him from being aggressive. Try to turn it into a physical battle where Zverev's height and reach give him an advantage. And most importantly, try to keep points short, because the longer rallies go, the more dangerous Alcaraz becomes. Alcaraz's game plan is equally clear. Attack Zverev's second serve, which can be vulnerable. Get into rallies and make Zverev move, especially side to side. Use drop shots and changes of pace to disrupt Zverev's rhythm. And when the match gets tight, turn up the intensity and force Zverev to make plays when he's feeling pressure. But here's where the sweat a lot comment becomes relevant to the actual tennis. By saying this publicly, Alcaraz is essentially telling Zverev exactly what his strategy is going to be. He's saying, I'm going to make you work. I'm going to grind you down physically and mentally. I'm going to turn this into a war of attrition. And we both know how you handle that. That takes balls. Because now Zverev knows it's coming. He can prepare for it. He can tell himself all match, I knew he was going to try this. I'm ready for it. But Alcaraz is betting that even knowing what's coming won't help. That Zverev's mental demons are too strong to overcome just by being aware of them. And honestly, Alcaraz is probably right, because Zverev's issues in big matches aren't about lack of preparation or not knowing what to expect. They're deeper than that. They're about what happens in his head when the pressure peaks. And you can't prepare your way out of that. You have to actually confront it and overcome it in the moment. The question is whether this comment from Alcaraz will actually help Zverev in some weird way. Sometimes when someone calls you out publicly, it can actually galvanize you. It can give you extra motivation. It can make you angry in a productive way that elevates your game. Zverev could walk into this match thinking, Alcaraz thinks I'm going to crack. He thinks I can't handle the pressure. I'm going to prove him wrong. And maybe that anger and determination pushes him to play the match of his life. But more likely, the comment is going to be in the back of Zverev's head all match. Every time there's a long rally, he'll be thinking, this is what Alcaraz was talking about. Every time he's breathing hard, he'll remember, he said I'd have to sweat a lot. Every time the match gets tight, he'll be aware that Alcaraz is watching for signs that he's cracking mentally. That's the insidious thing about good psychological warfare. It doesn't need to make your opponent completely fall apart. It just needs to take up a tiny bit of mental space that would otherwise be focused on playing tennis. If Zverev is even 5% distracted by thinking about Alcaraz's comment, that could be the difference between winning and losing. What's really interesting is that this represents a shift in how Alcaraz approaches tennis. When he first burst onto the scene, he was all about joy and passion and playing with freedom. He was the kid who smiled constantly, who celebrated every great shot, who seemed to just be having fun out there. The media loved him because he was such a refreshing change from the intensity and sometimes darkness of players like Djokovic. But that version of Alcaraz was maybe a bit naive. He was talented enough to win with that approach, but there were times where his opponents used his emotional openness against him. They could see when he was frustrated. They could tell when he was doubting himself. His emotions were all right there on the surface for everyone to read. This new version of Alcaraz is more calculated, more willing to play mind games, more comfortable being the villain if that's what it takes to win. He's still joyful and passionate on court, but he's also learning to weaponize words and psychology. He's becoming a more complete competitor, and that should terrify the rest of the tour, because Alcaraz was already one of the best players in the world with just his physical talent and technical skills. Now he's adding this mental edge, this willingness to get in opponents' heads, this strategic thinking about how to gain every possible advantage. That's the difference between being really good and being truly great. Zverev is unfortunately the test case for this evolution. He's the one who has to face this new, more ruthless Alcaraz in a Grand Slam semifinal. And given Zverev's history, given his vulnerabilities, given his track record in these situations, you have to think Alcaraz chose his words very deliberately with Zverev in mind. If this was a match against Sinner, Alcaraz probably wouldn't have said the same thing. Sinner doesn't have the same mental baggage. He's proven he can win the big matches. He doesn't have the reputation for wilting under pressure. So the sweat a lot comment wouldn't land the same way. But Zverev? It's like Alcaraz looked at Zverev's entire career, identified the weakest point, and decided to poke it as hard as possible right before their match. That's surgical. That's ruthless. That's champion-level mind games. Now let's talk about what's at stake, because that context matters too. This isn't just any match. This is an Australian Open semi-final. The winner goes to the final with a chance to win a Grand Slam. For Alcaraz, it would be his 5th major title. For Zverev, it would be his 1st. That asymmetry matters. Alcaraz has been here before. He's won Grand Slam finals. He knows what it takes. He's got that confidence that comes from having actually done it. Zverev is still chasing his 1st. And every time he gets close and doesn't break through, the pressure gets heavier. The doubt gets louder. The desperation increases. So when they're out there at 5-5 in the 5th set, and both of them are exhausted, and the match is hanging in the balance, who's more likely to make the big play? The guy who's done it before and knows he can do it again? Or the guy who's been in this position multiple times and failed every time? Alcaraz knows this. That's why he's comfortable making these comments. He's got the psychological advantage going in, and he's trying to increase it. He's trying to make Zverev think about all those past failures, to make him doubt whether this time will be any different. It's cold-blooded, but it's also smart. Because in sport at this level, you use every advantage you can get. If Zverev is vulnerable to this kind of psychological pressure, it would be almost negligent of Alcaraz not to apply it. The other layer to this is what it says about Alcaraz's confidence in his own game. Because to talk like this, you have to genuinely believe you're going to win. You have to be certain that you can back up your words. Otherwise, This comment becomes bulletin board material for Zverev. It becomes motivation that could come back to bite you. But Alcaraz clearly believes he's going to win. Not just believes, knows. He's looked at the matchup, considered all the variables, and concluded that he's the better player in the better mental state with more experience in these situations. So he's comfortable making a comment that would be incredibly risky if he wasn't absolutely certain of victory. That kind of confidence is either going to look brilliant or foolish, depending on the result. If Alcaraz wins, especially if he wins comfortably, this comment will be remembered as a perfect example of championship-level swagger. If Zverev wins, this comment will haunt Alcaraz and be used as an example of overconfidence and poor sportsmanship. So Alcaraz is essentially putting his reputation on the line with this statement. That takes guts, and it shows just how much he believes in himself and his ability to beat Zverev. Let's also consider how Zverev has responded to pressure in the past, because that's instructive. In some matches, when people have doubted him or criticized him, he's risen to the occasion. He's played some of his best tennis when he's had something to prove. His Olympic gold medal run was exactly that. People said he couldn't win the big one, and he went out and did it. But Grand Slams are different. There's something about the best-of-5 format, the 2-week grind, the historical significance that gets in Zverev's head in a way that shorter tournaments don't. He's proven he can win Masters 1000s. He's proven he can beat anyone on a given day. But he hasn't proven he can do it over 2 weeks at a Grand Slam when everyone's watching and the pressure is at its absolute peak. And Alcaraz's comment is designed to remind him of exactly that, to make him think about all those times he's come up short when it mattered most, to plant the seed of doubt that this time won't be any different. The cruel irony is that Zverev has probably been playing well enough at this Australian Open to actually win it. He's looked solid, his game is in good shape, he's been professional and focused. If you just looked at his tennis in isolation, you'd say he has a real chance. But tennis isn't played in isolation. It's played in your head as much as on the court. And Alcaraz has just invaded Zverev's mental space in a big way. Now it's not just about whether Zverev's forehand is working or whether his serve is clicking. It's about whether he can overcome the psychological weight of everything Alcaraz's comment represents. The physical aspect of the sweat a lot comment is worth examining too, because while the psychological meaning is obvious, there's also a literal element. Alcaraz is telling Zverev that he's going to make him work harder than he's ever worked, that he's going to push him to his physical limits, that this won't be a comfortable match where skill alone is enough. And that's actually a smart strategy against Zverev, because while Zverev is athletic and fit, he's not known for being one of those guys who can grind for 5 hours and come back the next day like nothing happened. He's tall and lanky, which is great for some aspects of tennis, but can be a disadvantage in ultra-physical matches. The longer a match goes, the more it favors compact, explosive movers like Alcaraz over tall, rangier players like Zverev. So Alcaraz is essentially saying, I'm going to turn this into the kind of match that favors me physically, and you're going to have to match that intensity and physicality if you want to win. Can you do that? Have you ever done that in a Grand Slam semifinal? Again, it's a question designed to create doubt. Because Zverev doesn't have a good answer. He hasn't won a Grand Slam semifinal yet. He hasn't proven he can outlast someone like Alcaraz in a physical war. So the question itself is damaging, regardless of how Zverev might try to answer it. What's fascinating is imagining how this plays out in the actual match. First set, let's say it's close. Every game is competitive. Both players are holding serve pretty comfortably. Then Alcaraz wins a particularly long, grueling rally. He looks over at Zverev, maybe with a little smile, maybe with nothing, but they both know what he's thinking. This is what I was talking about. You're already sweating. This is just the first set. That moment, that nonverbal communication, could be the beginning of Zverev's mental unraveling, or it could galvanize him to fight even harder. The beauty of sport is that we don't know which way it'll go until it happens. But based on history, based on what we know about both players, The smart money is on Alcaraz having calculated this perfectly. He's not just talented, he's becoming a student of the game and his opponents. He's learning to attack weaknesses not just in their forehands or backhands, but in their minds and hearts. That's what separates champions from also-rans. Anyone can hit a good forehand. The best players in the world can all hit great shots. What separates them is the mental game, the strategic thinking, the ability to get in opponents' heads and make them doubt themselves. And with this one comment, Alcaraz has shown he's mastering that skill faster than anyone expected. He's not just the future of tennis. He's learning from the champions who came before him and adopting their ruthlessness while maintaining his own style and personality. For Zverev, this match just became about more than tennis. It's about proving he can overcome the narrative that's followed him his entire career. It's about showing he can handle the pressure when someone calls him out publicly. It's about finally winning the big match that's eluded him for so long. No pressure, right? Just has to play the match of his life against one of the best players in the world, who just publicly questioned whether he's mentally tough enough to compete at this level. Easy. The thing is, Zverev knows all of this. He's not stupid. He understands what Alcaraz was doing with that comment. He can see the psychological warfare for what it is. But knowing you're being manipulated doesn't necessarily help you avoid being affected by it. Sometimes awareness makes it worse, because now you're thinking about the manipulation instead of just playing tennis. This is the genius of Alcaraz's approach. He's not trying to hide his strategy. He's openly telling Zverev, I'm going to make this really hard for you, and I think you're going to crack. And even though Zverev can see it coming, that doesn't mean he can stop it from working. It's like if someone says, don't think about a pink elephant. Now, you can't not think about it. Alcaraz has planted the idea in Zverev's head that he's going to have to sweat a lot, and that his mental toughness will be tested. Even if Zverev consciously rejects that idea, it's still there, taking up mental space, creating doubt. So, here's the real question. Can Zverev finally silence his doubters and prove Alcaraz wrong? Or will this be another chapter in his story of coming up short in the biggest moments? Is Alcaraz's trash talk going to backfire and motivate Zverev to the match of his life? Or has he perfectly identified and exploited Zverev's biggest weakness? Drop your prediction in the comments and let us know if you think Alcaraz crossed a line or if this is exactly the kind of edge great champions need. Subscribe because this match is going to be must-watch tennis and you'll want to catch our post-match analysis. Hit that like button if you appreciate the psychological warfare aspect of tennis, because sometimes the mental battle is even more compelling than the physical.